Well, it's been an eventful week, guys. Disaster has struck and my lathe has broken down. Not major. Basically the windings in the armature of the motor have burned out. I was working it hard at the time. I was parting off some 50mm aluminium. I had a piece in the lathe about 6 inch long. I was parting outside of the steady and parting off, 7 or 8 of them. And due to the low torque that the lathe has, I was stalling the lathe out on occasion. And the motor got hotter and hotter and hotter. Eventually I could start to smell something, and it blew the RCD in the power supply to the workshop. So thought nothing of it. Thought, oh yes, that motor's hot. Didn't know why it had blown the RCD. Sounded a bit sinister. Put the trip back on, came back half an hour later, that sort of thing, having let the motor cool down. It all started up, no problem, but I could see and hear the arcing of the brushes on the commutator of the motor. So, first thing I thought, right, okay, let's strip it down. So I stripped it down. I'll show you some footage of the strip down and a few photos of where I am with it at the moment. So, cut a long story short, it's about 4 months old, the lathe. So I thought, right, okay, I'm going to have to bite the bullet here, contact WARCO, perhaps get a new motor. I had the motor to bits, examined it. It wasn't, warm brushes, anything like that. It was in a, it basically cooked the windings. It could do with something like a thermal protection on it, would be a good idea. And again, I'm surprised that the fuse for the power supply to the motor itself didn't blow, rather than blow the RCD straight away. Anyway, having said that, I contacted WARCO, spoke after about 5 or 6 phone calls, managed to get through to their after sales department, which is also their parts department. Spoke to a gentleman there. He was very helpful. First thing he said was, well, it could possibly be the brushes. The brushes, when I took them out, didn't look particularly worn. They were about 12mm long. The gentleman informed me that even new ones are only about 15mm long, and they'll happily run down to about 8mm long before giving any problems. I told him that you could see the burning on the windings, and he said, oh, it sounds like the motor's blown. So this was the second phone call that I made to him. First of all, he was going to send me a new set of brushes, which he did, but obviously then I stripped the motor down, saw the state of the armature. Tried polishing up the commutator on the armature, the little segmented tooth ring. Put it back together, same thing, blowing fuses this time, and arcing, so yeah, motor blown. So got back to WARCO. The gentleman had already posted me out a set of brushes. This was last Thursday, and I actually received the brushes in the post, Friday morning in the post. So it was later on the Thursday afternoon that I spoke to the gentleman, and he said, oh well, yes, I agree, the motor shouldn't have gone, I'll send you out a replacement motor, which sort of fair play to WARCO. I was expecting to have to pay, that sort of thing, but no question whatsoever. Yeah, we'll get you one out in the post. And he said to me, I won't be able to get it out until the Friday because I was too late on the Thursday, so I should receive the motor sometime early next week, which is this week coming. This is Sunday morning now. So I'm hopefully Monday or Tuesday I should receive my new motor and we'll be back up and running. Everything seems to come in threes, as they say. My Evolution chop saw, actually the brushes on that have worn as well. I've had a good look at the motor, taking it apart. It's purely the brushes. I've given it a fair bit of use, and yeah, it hasn't overheated or anything, but I'm starting to see nasty arcing coming out of the rear of the motor, so I think I'll change the brushes as a first clean up the commutator and change the brushes. So that's 2 machines, and then of course the kettle blew up in the house, which was the third thing. Seemed to get through a kettle about one every 12 months, but maybe it's the amount of coffee I drink, hey ho. So yeah, that's the 3 things. Hopefully that's the last of it. So the lathe went, the chop saw went, and the kettle being the most important one of the lot, I would have thought, but obviously no machining can be done until the lathe is back up and running. So I'll give you some shots and maybe a little bit of a show and tell on how to change the motor Should you, any of you come across the same problem yourselves. It's a very simple little job, and it's going to give me the opportunity to strip the lathe down to a certain degree and give it a damn good clean and a bit of a clean up and service at the same time. So let's get on with it, and I'll show you some photos of that. So as you can see, there's the offending article all stripped out and what have you. Just got to disconnect the wiring. It's all disconnected from the mains. Nuts, bolts, pulleys, belts, all that sort of thing. It's going to give me the opportunity. As you can see, it's covered in swarf. I did clean out the trays before I stripped it down. It was working hard, parting off. It was full of aluminium at the time. I just removed the worst. So what I'm going to do now is give it all a really good clean down. Get everything gleaming, get it all oiled up. All the oil points, oil everything, get it all clean, ready to put back together. It's dirty. It's dirty down inside. I don't know if you can see that underneath the bottom on the casting there. The motor itself was clean, but yeah, it gives me the opportunity to clean it all up, make sure everything's tight, give it a little bit of a service, grease all the gears, that sort of thing, get it all sorted out. The tray from the machine, obviously I've removed it off its tray and off its mounts. It's 2 bolts. It mounts on the bench. That now gives me the opportunity to give the tray a good clean as well, so that I can bolt it all back down, put it all back together, and it'll look hunky-dory with a new motor. I missed the footage of taking the motor out itself, but I'll show you putting it back in again. Wiring wise, there's an earth wire which is onto an earth point here, with a little Phillips screw, and they're inside the motor itself. It has 2 bolts. Let's just bring it up. 2 bolts, one either side there, Allen bolts, with 2 draw bolts right through the motor, and it comes apart very simply. Remove the 2 bolts and it pulls apart. There are 2 wires connected inside this housing. I'll show you those in a second. So step 1 of taking the motor apart, remove the carbon brushes and the little holders. There they are on the top there. Pair of carbon brushes and the 2 holders. So remove those first, so you don't break them when you're taking the top cover off. So let's undo these 2 bolts and I'll come back. So that's the 2 bolts removed, and the top cover should just simply pull off. It does. So there's the innards. Mustn't lose the ring which goes in the end, little ring. And the 2 other cables, I don't know whether you can quite find it, spade connectors onto the 2 brush holders. So I need to pull them off the spade connectors, and you can see there's signs of temperature and warmth been going on in there. Those 2 spade terminals are pretty cooked in there. So I'll be putting new spade terminals on the end before I connect up to the new motor when it arrives. So I've removed the little cable gland. There it is. Pushes from the inside out, a pair of pliers, and it basically pushes out. The cable on the end here is very hard and brittle. It's seen signs of heat, and as you can see, the spade terminals are cooked as well. I'll replace those. Nothing to see really in the end cover, not particularly dirty, anything like that. The 2 spades removed. Let's have a look at the armature. I have had it apart and tried again. Cleaned it up, but as you can see, it's arcing again straight away. I'll pull the armature out and let you show you the burning of the windings. So we're fully stripped down now. That's the end cover with the fibre washer. Sorry. That's the pulley end, spring washer in there. That's that casing. There's the outer, the stator of the motor, which has the permanent magnets, and here's the rotor itself. And as you can see, it's well blackened, and the windings somewhere in here have burned out, which is causing it to arc like an absolute what's it. There's no physical damage to the commutator. Been through it all, had the magnifying glass on it. There's no material between any of the teeth, that sort of thing. And polished the surface up, tried it again with the brushes, but still almost as if there's a few windings in here somewhere that have shorted, or the insulation has broken down on the copper winding, and it's arcing and not liking it. Other end didn't look too bad. fan, the bearing that end, but yeah, I could probably get away with just a new rotor, but WARCO is sending me a complete new motor, so happy days. So yeah, all stripped. That's the motor out. I'm waiting for the new motor. So next step, give it all a good clean down. And what I will do is just put the motor back into the housing, back together, and just show you what steps I had to take to remove the motor. So let's talk about removing the motor. First job, make sure you unplug from the mains. We're going in the electrical box. I've already removed the screws off the back. Basically 6 screws on the outside. This one actually, my DRO actually uses the same mounting bolts just to tidy the cables, but I've removed all that. We'll remove the screws on the back. As I said, I'm going to give all this a good clean up after. Right, and that is the rear cover removed. That is the variable drive board for the motor speed, transformer board and all the rest of it down there, and various wires. You can see the motor hiding down in the bottom. Okay, next little job, I've left these nuts loose. We need to remove this switch here, which is the guard interlock switch. We've taken the back cover off first here so that I can hold the back of the switch, so that when I'm undoing the nuts, I'm not rotating it and ripping the wires off. So I've left these loose. Bear with me 2 seconds. I'll just pull the 2 nuts off and show you the back of that. Oh, I'm trying to do it with one hand on the camera. Here we go. So that's the 2 nuts taken off the back, and the switch will now pull out from the inside, and that's the interlock switch for the rear, the gear train cover. So step 2 is going to be to loosen off the belt tensioner. There we are. I got a head torch on now. I can point with a bit of light. Right, to undo the belt tensioner, you simply need to loosen this screw off here. That allows the center pulley, or the idler pulley of the 3, to slide back, and you should simply be able to pull off the 2 drive belts. There we are. That's the 2 drive belts removed. They're identical belts. In fact, I need to order myself a spare pair of these from WARCO. I would imagine they're only a couple of quid. In fact, I do know they're a Gates belt. I'd probably be able to find them on eBay or what have you. It's a 5mm. You soon work out the length, but it's a little Gates drive belt. Okay. So having done that, next step is to remove the bottom pulley. Now there are 2 grub screws at 90 degrees to each other, one there, one there, and it is keyed onto the shaft. Screwdriver behind, pair of pliers, that sort of thing. I haven't put the key back in for the purposes of this, so yeah, just remove the pulley. It's quite a good fit on there. As you can see, I can just pop it off with a screwdriver, and that's the pulley removed. So the next thing I'm going to do is there are 4 bolts around the outside of the motor itself. Let's have a look. 1, 2, 3, and 1 tucked up under there, 4. I'm going to undo these 4 bolts completely, and then the next step is we have 1 bolt there, another one there, and just below that, beside the gear here, there's another one. And then we'll remove those 3 bolts. So I'll get on with that. So yeah, 4 motor bolts. I've only put them in loose. Just pull those out, and basically that disconnects the motor from the mounting plate. I tell you what, before I move the main plate, I'll try and get a bit more realistic light in here. It's not showing up very good for you. Anyway, so I'll remove the 4 bolts and we'll come back. Okay, that's far better. Let's have a look, get you the right way up. Okay, so I've removed the 4 bolts around the outside of the motor, pulleys off, belts are off, and I've released the adjuster. So the next step are these 3 large bolts here, 1 there, 1 there, and 1 there. And then basically this whole black plate will come away from the end of the machine. So I know I've only put them in loose, It's just, yeah, I'll leave the top one in place and remove the lower two. That's the one out of the way. Second one, as I say, I only put them in loose just to help with the demonstration of this. That's the second one, and then I'll just pop the top one out. Okay, right. Four bolts and washers, and the plate will then simply come out of the way. You've still got the earth wires attached. As you saw earlier, I've disconnected the wiring from the motor, but the motor will sit there, and you can simply lift the motor out of the hole it sits in, and that's basically how to remove your motor. And to put it back in, may do you another little video when the new motor arrives and fit it in. It's got a WARCO sticker on it. However, exactly the same motor spec is used on other similar lathes originating in China. I know the Optimum one has the same, but yeah, it's 600 watt brushed motor. Now, there are a couple of companies out there, and I was speaking to a guy on my channel the other day, just as a couple of comments. He was looking at a Toolco lathe, very similar to this one, but with a bigger center height. I think it was an 8x16, whereas this is like a 7x14. And he was telling me that they've got a 750 watt brushless motor in theirs. Maybe going forward, I might be able to speak to, I believe it's Toolco, but going forward, I may be able to speak to them. The 750 watt, I'm told, is a replacement. I do not know. I may be able to take this motor away and get a brushless 750. The only thing I don't know is, does it work with the same speed controller? So that might be an upgrade at some stage in the future. We'll see. Maybe this was just a duff motor. Maybe I was just working it too hard. I'll have to take it a bit easier on it in future. We'll see. Okay, so that's how to remove the motor. So I'm going to take this opportunity to give it all a damn good clean. As you can see, it needs a clean. I do spray the gears probably every time I take the rear cover off, basically. But I spray the gears. I do leave them with a little bit of backlash, as you can hear, always. I do spray them with basically chain lube grease, you know, that anti-fling stuff. I've wiped off the residual grease off it and what have you for the time being. But yeah, great big cleanup now. Gives me the opportunity to have a big cleanup, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I've cleaned everything up. The tray is as clean as you're going to get it. All the back of it, everything's all cleaned out, wiped down, you know, degreased, got all the gunk off it and what have you, you know, all nice and shiny again. Squirted oil on the ways, you know, wiped oil on my hand over the chuck. I am working, you know, in and outdoors in a wooden shed, and I do get moisture issues, so I do have to make sure that everything that's, you know, not painted has got oil on it if I'm going to leave it for more than, you know, 24 hours. So yeah, I just always leave everything oiled up. You know, it doesn't do any harm. Maybe it gets a bit grubby when you're working. During the course of the cleanup, something bit me. Nothing new there. Anyway, something sharp, didn't even feel it. Next thing I know is, where's this red coming from? But yeah, it's only a little nick. Anyway, so yeah, I've just, you know, placed everything back in position in the meantime. There's the motor, you know, the dead one. I mean, nuts and bolts and screws are all there. Yeah, so awaiting the new motor, guys. So when it comes, we'll be back up and running. So that's this week's goings on. Further to that, I'm expecting the new motor hopefully Monday, maybe Tuesday. I'm away for a week on holiday Wednesday, so it's going to be a little bit of delay, but hopefully once the lathe's back up and running, I'm over this sort of period of heavy workload that I've got on at the moment. The week off's not helping that because I'm going to be busy when I come back. But the quick change tool post, we'll try and get that going as soon as we come back. I've got the materials in now, so we'll be straight back on it. Thanks for watching, guys. Like and subscribe.